This is Dr. Peter Grinspoon, Grinspoon on Drugs. Thank you for listening. There was a recent article in the New York Times, which was mind-blowing. I actually had the pleasure and honor of working with the author of the article, who did a great job. There were some Nixon tapes that had been sort of neglected. Some of them are a little bit hard to listen to, these secretly recorded tapes. And someone very diligently listened through all of them and actually found clips where Richard Nixon was saying he doesn't think cannabis is particularly dangerous. This is mind-blowing. There are also clips with him saying people shouldn't be locked away for 20 years for cannabis possession. Of course, this is all because of the war on drugs that he started. He said that on these tapes, again, cannabis is, quote, not particularly dangerous. And this is in contradiction to his public rhetoric where he says, I want a goddamn strong statement on marijuana. So at the time when Nixon was starting the war on drugs, which has had such a devastating impact on our society. Over the last 50 years, due to Nixon's war on cannabis, which was just continued and perpetuated by our government, there have been more than 20 million arrests for nonviolent cannabis possession, mostly of people with brown and black skin. Blacks and whites use cannabis at the same rates, and blacks are arrested 4 times as often. They also get worse criminal penalties. When you get arrested for cannabis, and you get any kind of entanglement with the criminal justice system, this can cause generational poverty. It can really destroy lives. It can affect your housing, your education, and your employment. It makes it really, really difficult. You start out with a couple strikes against you. And it was just really fascinating to read. I mean, annoying and infuriating, but really fascinating to read about how Nixon didn't think cannabis was particularly dangerous, given that my dad's whole life work, Dr. Lester Grinspoon, was arguing that cannabis isn't particularly dangerous. Of course, there are harms. People shouldn't use it before driving. Pregnant women, breastfeeding women shouldn't use it. You shouldn't use it if you have a cardiac arrhythmia or a strong history or family history of psychosis. But aside from that, cannabis for adults, especially if you're not smoking it, is not particularly dangerous. It's certainly less dangerous than alcohol, which killed 172,000 people last year. Obviously, it's less dangerous than opiates, methamphetamine, benzodiazepines, all the other drugs that are equally stigmatized and criticized like cannabis is. So my dad was arguing that cannabis is not particularly dangerous, and Richard Nixon was clamping down, throwing people in prison, wrecking lives, destroying careers, and it's just the height of sort of cynicism, of nihilism, of hypocrisy to find out that Nixon really didn't believe anything that he was saying from the very beginning. And you just wonder, the opportunity cost of all of this is just tremendous. Again, millions of lives ruined. U.S. has the highest incarceration rate of any country. It's really just awful. And the other thing that was really harmed is that there were so many tens of millions of people that desperately could have used cannabis as a medicine for pain, for anxiety, for insomnia, for multiple sclerosis, for nausea and vomiting that are associated with chemotherapy. And all this research got delayed for 50 years because Nixon stuck cannabis in Schedule 1 of the Controlled Substance Act, the most restrictive schedule, and it makes it very difficult to research. So very, very upsetting article recently in the New York Times about how Nixon thought cannabis was not particularly dangerous. It highlights just the contentious and sort of mind-blowingly dishonest history that the U.S. government has had, and physicians too have not been particularly honest about cannabis. They just really, over the years, they're getting better now, but over the years they've really imbibed and repeated a lot of the government's nonsense. And fortunately, with legalization and with changing social norms and beliefs and attitudes, we're coming out of the dark ages. Cannabis is becoming legalized. It's becoming destigmatized for use in medicine. And also it's just becoming destigmatized for use in general. People see it as a healthier alternative to alcohol, which in most cases it really is. Thank you for listening to Grinspoon on Drugs.